All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is problem number 27 on page 314, section 6.2. It's a standard simplex method problem because the three constraints are all less than or equal to, and then we have this implied non-negativity constraint. First step is to take the optimization function, this p equals 4x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus 2x sub 3. Take your three terms on the right and move them all to the left. So this will become a negative 4x sub 1 minus 3x sub 2 minus 2x sub 3. The p is already on the left, so it's a positive p. And now the right-hand side has nothing, so it's equal to 0. Next step is to add slack variables. Since there's three inequalities, we're going to use all three slack variables. So the 3x sub 1 plus 2x sub 2, change this to a sub 1, plus 2x sub 2 plus 5x sub 3. And we're going to add this slack variable s sub 1. Now instead of less than or equal to 23, it's equal to 23. Next inequality, 2x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus x sub 3. We're going to add the slack variable s sub 2. Now it's equal to 8. And finally, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus 2x sub 3. We're going to add the slack variable s sub 3, and now it's equal to 7. And we don't need to write these implied non-negativities. All right, so this is going to be turned into our matrix. Across the top, it's x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, s sub 1, s sub 2, s sub 3, and p. And then across the sides, it's s sub 1, s sub 2, s sub 3, and p. And this objective function will be at the bottom. So these first three inequality functions will be what we write out first. So it's going to be a 3, 2, 5, 1, 3, 2, 5, 1, and then 0, 0, 0. And here's our augmentation. Here's our dashed line. Again, most textbooks use this dashed line on the bottom. It doesn't matter if it's solid or not. And this is an augmented matrix. Here, let me do this right here. Augmented with a solution column. So the solution for this first one is 23. Next one is 21101. 211. No S1. There's one S2. No S3s. No Ps. And that's equal to 8. And the final one is 112, 0 S sub 1s, 0 S sub 2s, 1 S sub 3, 0 P's, and that's equal to 7. And then we put the objective function on the bottom, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, and 0, 0, 0, 1. P is one of those P's, and that's equal to 0. So now we're ready to figure out our pivot row. The pivot row, or correction, the pivot column is the most negative column. In this case, it's negative 4. And we want to see which number in that column we pivot off of, and we do these divisions. So we do 23 divided by 3. Let me do this in red here. 23 divided by 3. That's 7 and 2/3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So right now that one's winning. Smallest one wins. And 7 divided by 1 is 7. So the 8 divided by 2 equals 4 wins. And this is the number we pivot off of. So first thing we want to do is make that number a 1. So in this case, we take row 2 divided by 2. And that becomes our new row 2. Everything else stays the same. But we also remind ourselves that this x sub 2 replaces this s sub 2 in the very next step. All right, so I'm going to hit pause, write all this down again, and you can see that I'm changing row 2. I'm dividing everything in row 2 by 2. Let's just do it. Let me hit pause just to save time and write the headers and stuff over again. All right, so I rewrote the headers. I rewrote row 1, row 3, and row 4 because they don't change. Only row 2 changes. So I'm taking this first 2 in row 2 and dividing it by 2, and I get a 1. And then this 1 gets divided by 2, and I get 1/2. And this 1 gets divided by 2, and I get 1/2. 0 divided by 2 is 0. 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. 0 divided by 2 is 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now, I'm still pivoting off this number. And also notice I replaced S2 with X2. I'm pivoting all this number. I'm going to use this number that I turned into a 1, to change the number above it to a 0 and the 2 numbers below it to zeros. So every number besides the pivot number has to be changed by zeros. So there's going to be 3 changes in this next step. I'm going to take, let me write this in red. I'm going to take row 2 and multiply it by -3 and add it to row 1 to replace row 1. I'm going to take row 2, multiply by a negative, and add it to row 3 to replace row 3. I'm going to take row 2, multiply by a +4, add it to row 4 to replace row 4. So I'm going to rewrite this matrix over here and get all the headers down. Row 2 stays the same now, and rows 1, 3, and 4 are going to change. So let's take a look at that. So here we go. Row 2 gets multiplied by a -3 and added to row 1. I get the 0 I was looking for over here. 1/2 gets multiplied by a -3. I get -3/2. -3/2 plus 2, -3/2 plus 6/2 is a +3/2 up here. -3 times 1/2 is -3/2 plus 5. -3/2 plus 10/2 is 7/2. Here we go. -3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is still 1. -3 times 1/2 is -3/2, plus 0 is -3/2. -3 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is still 0. -3 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is still 0. -3 times 4 is 12, plus, or -12, plus 23 is 11. Now we do the second one. -1 times row 2, plus this 1 is the 0 that I was looking for. -1 times 1/2 is -1/2, plus 1 is +1/2. -1 times 1/2 is -1/2 plus 2. -1/2 plus 4/2 is 3/2. -1 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is still 0. -1 times 1/2 is -1/2, plus 0 is -1/2. -1/2, or -1 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is still 1. -1 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is still 0. -1 times 4 is -4, plus 7 is 3. And then the final row, let me erase these arrowheads here so we can kind of look at them. Here we go. Final row, 4 times 1 is 4, plus this 4 is 0. 4 times 1/2 is 2, plus this -3 is 1. I'm sorry, is -1. 4 times 1/2 is 2, plus this -2 is 0. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is still 0. 4 times 1/2 is 2, plus 0 is 2. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is still 0. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And 4 times 4 is 16 plus 0 is 16. All right. Next step, we're done with our pivot, so I can erase this dashed line here. And we look at the bottom row and find the most negative. Since there's only one negative sign, that's the one we pivot off of. That's our pivot column. And then we do our division to see which number in that column do we pivot off of. 11 divided by 3/2, which is the same as 11 times 2/3. You flip the fraction and multiply. That's 22/3, which is 7 1/3. Next is 4 divided by 1/2, which is 4 times 2 over 1, or just 4 times 2. That gives me 8, so 7 1/3 is winning so far. 3 times 1/2 is the same as 3 times 2 over 1, which is 6. The 6 wins, so we're pivoting off this 1/2 right here. So reminder, we're going to replace x sub 2, which is the column that the 1/2's in, with this s sub 3, which is the row that the 1/2 is in. So I'm going to recopy this. I'm going to slide everything up a little bit and recopy this, and then we'll work on that pivot. So I noticed when I moved this down that I had made a mistake earlier. I circled the wrong one up here. If you look right here, that's not even above my first column. I should have circled the one above the first column, and I should have replaced s sub 2 with x sub 1. Hopefully you caught that. So this right here should be at x sub 1. Same thing over here, should be at x sub 1. And I'm replacing the s sub 3 with x sub 2. So this should be an x sub 1. Now everything is good. So I just replace s sub 3 with x sub 2 because that's above my 1/2. That's the second column's replacing the third s sub 3 slack variable. And I'm taking row 3 and multiplying it by 2 because I need that to be a 1. So row 3 gets multiplied by 2, and that replaces row 3. Rows 1, 2, and 4 stay the same. Row 3 gets multiplied by 2. So 0 times 2 is 0. 1/2 times 2 is the one that I'm looking for. 3/2 times 2 is 3. 0 times 2 is 0. Negative 1/2 times 2 is negative 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 0 times 2 is 0. And 3 times 2 is 6. Now I'm going to use row 3 to make the row 1, row 2, and row 4 numbers all zeros that are in that same column. So first I have to multiply negative 3/2 times row 3 plus row 1. That replaces row 1. And then negative 1/2 row 3 plus row 2. That replaces row 2. And then a negative, I'm sorry, just leave row 3 alone because it's already a positive 1. So row 3 plus row 4 replaces row 4. That makes that final 0. All right. Let me grab those two matrices and move them to a page by themselves so we can see that pivot. So I'm going to do these. We only have about a minute left. I'm going to do these. I'm going to hit pause and do these, and you review them. So remember, you're doing negative 2/3 times row 3 plus row 1, negative 1/2 times row 3 plus row 2, and then row 3 plus row 4. So I'm going to do those, and you verify. Take a moment, hit pause, and verify, and then we'll double check our answers. So here's my solutions for the first, second, and fourth rows after I did the row echelon transformations. And we get x sub 1 equals 1, x sub 2 equals 6, and our max profit, or our max P, is 22. So I'm going to write that equation down just to verify. So I'm going to hit pause, write that equation down, and verify. So here we go. The max equation was P equals 4x sub 1 plus 3x sub 2 plus 2x sub 3. I replaced the x sub 1 with 1 and the x sub 2 with 6, and you do in fact get 22. Hope this Hope this helps.